If you've been pumped that the Sony ZV-E10 Mark I is finally getting an update, well, the specs have officially leaked for the Mark II. Keep things simple, we're just going to say Mark I, Mark II, talking about the ZV-E10 Mark I or Mark II. So let's get into the leak specs, the stuff that's official, the things that we don't know yet, and some stuff that's been overlooked that if you're looking to use this camera for video are some things you might want to consider, and it may sway your decision, but we'll talk about that. So here's the rundown of the leak specs of what they have confirmed, quote unquote, officially in the camera. Looking at the 26 megapixel same sensor coming from the FX30, dropped down to the A6700, and now being shared to the Mark II for the ZV-E10. That's also going to include the 5.6K oversampling in 4K that is coming because we're getting 4K 60p, 422 10-bit. I'm thinking and hoping it'll be the 4K 120p, but that's a high hope and high probability, considering that any other camera, they've still shared the same video resolution specs from one camera to the other if that sensor has been the same. So I'm hoping no corners are cut when it comes to the 4K 120 or 4K 60. Video creators, you can rejoice that we're now getting the FZ100 battery instead of the FW50 battery, and it will be a huge difference in battery life. It is a world difference not having to constantly be looking in the corner of the camera trying to wonder if your battery is about to die, which it probably is with the FW50. But not only there's a bigger battery, but we're getting a deeper grip from like that A6700. They didn't say though if it's going to include that scroll dial thing on the front like on the A6700, but my guess, high probability that it probably won't be. I think it won't, because maybe that's for more hybrid-esque cameras. I don't know. We didn't see it on anything like the ZV-E1, so deeper grip doesn't necessarily mean that. I think it just may mean maybe like the ZV-E1. And speaking of borrowing parts from other cameras, I think we're still going to see one SD card slot, because why would they put two on a less expensive camera? But other brands do it, but it's just not coming to this one. I don't think, high probability that it's not going to be there, because that side panel will probably be updated and it still will be that micro HDMI that everyone loves to hate. And I also think the USB-C will be that updated one like we've seen across one. So you'll probably get that 4K 30p. Maybe they updated that even, hopefully, but it probably will still be the 4K 30p USB live streaming on that camera as well. And then a quick rundown of some of the other things that they mentioned was LUT support, active stabilization with the 1.5 times crop, the updated microphone from the Sony ZV-E1, the built-in microphone that is on the top here. And then there was an update about them doing a new kit lens, but I don't think it's like improved glass optics or what have you. So like it's sharper or better necessarily. I think it's maybe more like the body or the motors or something like that are improved. And that's pretty much what it seems like, maybe a slight software upgrade, maybe. So those are the specs that are officially, quote unquote, officially leaked. But now let's look at some of the other stuff that I'm just guessing based on some of the similarities between the A6700 and the ZV-E10 Mark II allegedly will have on this camera. So video resolution wise, I think that 4K 120p and the 4K 60p being in the camera will be there. They probably will come with some kind of a crop similar to the A6700, maybe a little bit more, but obviously they talked about the active stay still being at a 1.5 times crop. That's the exact same of what we see for the most part in the ZV-E10 Mark I. And then the fact they mentioned LUT support, that S-Log3 as well as the S-Cinetone, I hope that makes it to the camera, should be in there. So I think there's a high probability of a yes on that one. And that should include also the proxy recordings, because that's never not been included. So that should be in there too, as well as, you know, like the smart hot shoe, so you can use it with all your devices and stuff. And then I already mentioned the USB-C being updated to, you know, do the 4K streaming so that it's better than what was in this camera. So you probably are asking yourself, well, Diana, what's missing? Well, Steve, let me tell you, there's no mechanical shutter. So if you enjoy doing this and seeing that nice mechanical shutter that helps you to deal with any banding or anything like that, especially if you're taking graduation photos or anything like that for your family, you're not going to get that in this camera. Now, it's not an end all be all, because again, this camera is mostly for video centric creators. They're probably wanting to push people, or maybe have them have a reason to push up to the A6700, which does have a mechanical shutter, or drop down and get the ZV-E10 Mark I, because obviously it does have it. but I don't think that big of a deal. It's more of a why take it out if it was already in the camera versus, honestly, with the A6700, it was already a package, so to speak. Why not have it in this one? Obviously, the thing is going to be touted as price. We already always hear that anytime it's like, well, why is this in here but not that? They're like, oh, well, price. But these next two ones are a huge deal breaker for me, and that is no IBIS and no AI tech in the camera. The AI tech is like a want for some people, not necessarily a need. So that isn't probably going to be a deal breaker for a lot of folks. But the whole thing of the mentioning active stabilization at a 1.5 times crop is the same garbage active stabilization in the Mark I. And I use that word accurately. It is actual garbage in that one because, and I said this when this came out, I was like, oh, it's better because you can get like, handheld, but you don't want to use it. You want to use Sony Catalyst Browse. That's the best stabilization you're going to get in the camera. Still true, but I was not hoping that that would still be true for the Mark II, because when you look at a Sony Catalyst Browse workflow, unless you buy Sony Catalyst Prepare, then you can drop all of your clips like from your SD card and then put stabilization on all of those. That's not bad, but one clip at a time, if you're vlogging or if you have a long day's event, multiple stuff that you're doing, or it's just a big content day, you're batch recording and some stuff needs it, others don't, and you just kind of want to drop it and forget about it, it's a longer process. But if you just need to put in some clips, it's honestly not bad, and it is amazing software that we get for free. But not having IBIS, I think, in my opinion, is a huge mistake for this specific model of cameras. The ZV cameras are built around it being video centric and for creators. And the fact that you're not getting the more improved IBIS as they keep trying to do in every iteration, if anything, the APS-C should probably have the best IBIS in the camera. Why? Because it's a smaller sensor. You have more space. Especially when you look at how much this camera is going to cost, allegedly, which we'll talk about that in just a second. But that is a very competitive space, and there's tons of cameras circling around this one like blood in the water and it being a shark. They're ready to eat it before it even drops. And then there's no dynamic active stabilization either. If they're only saying active stabilization, that means there's no dynamic active. I'm hoping that I'm wrong. I really do. I would love to see it. But that means that it's going to also be a worse version. Maybe the clips that come out on embargo day that gets dropped, they're taking the 1-2 step kind of vlog, and it's like 1, 2, 3, like you're just taking those micro steps while you're vlogging. But if you're walking, like I got somewhere to be kind of a stuff like you are in an airport, or just natural everyday stuff of how you usually would walk, you're not walking that slow. You're walking at a faster pace. You need IBIS to catch those micro jitters and stuff like that. The lack of an IBIS in this camera was one of the biggest things that we wish and we hope that a newer version would have, that being the A6700. So thank you for that one, as well as the ZV-E10. Thank you for that one. But this camera deserved to have it too. I'm not going to gush over this. The active stabilization is vital to being based on the IBIS when IBIS is present, which is why it was better in the ZV-E10 and better in the A6700. Taking the IBIS out means that it's trying to stand alone unless we see, some new technology jump into the thing, but there's no AI chip. There's no AI technology being dropped in here unless there's something new we haven't heard of or seen of in the Sony lineup yet that they made because of this. Then it's just like how can it be for vlogging or on the go and whatever kind of stuff if there's always going to be a problem with that thing, because they don't make a bunch of OSS based lenses anymore. They don't. You have the kit lens, which will be the new one. I was hoping that would be something like a 12 to 35 OSS, even if it's still a variable aperture, let it go from an f3.5, 5.6, whatever, but at least be wider at 12 to maybe 35 millimeters. That would be a dope kit lens. This could have been a win, but it's going to be like not that big of a deal. So kit lenses are plenty, but not that big of a deal. But you see this lens? This is the 10 to 20 G lens, costs way more than the 10 to 18 f4 lens that came out before it, which I must have if you have the ZV line of cameras, honestly, especially the ZV-E10 Mark I or II. It's going to be essential because if you notice, there's no OSS or optical steady shot in this lens or any of the other ones that came out. When this one came out, it's like the 15 f1.4 and then the 11 f1.8. Amazing for vlogging. Super fun. Great. No as OSS. So I'm thinking at that time, gotta be stabilization in the camera, right? No, 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 no. I can't. Like, I can't understand why we don't have IBIS in the next iteration of this camera, because it would make it such an amazing bestseller. Here's why, like I said, it's blood in the water at this alleged price point. $1,200, let's say even $1,100 to $1,300, like $1,299 is the price tag. If it's anywhere between that range, there's so many cameras that are really good, can do way more in certain areas than this camera, and not just spec for spec, but the intended audience with the intended use case is going to want something else, and not by Sony. So in Sony land, in this price range, we're looking at the A6700 new cameras, that is, and then you're looking at the FX30, which the FX30 is a bit much for somebody that wants creator-based stuff, which is why I never touched it. I waited, and I'm like, I just want to wait and see if they do something more creator-based. They did. It was the ZV-E1. I love this camera to death, but I love it to life, not to death. We're not speaking that weirdo stuff. All right, so, but that's what I wanted. And it was the perfect transition to go from APS-C to full frame. Not that I cared about the sensor size, I cared about the use case of the stuff, and other people will too. But when you go over to Lumix land, that Lumix X9 is going to be a much bigger problem than a lot of people are anticipating, regardless as to the crap that came out when the camera was first announced. Because the average everyday consumer, everyday creator don't care about the camera gate and all this extra other stuff and embargo drop videos. They don't care nothing about that. They have a certain amount of money that they want to spend to making their life as a creator that much easier. And the fact that that camera comes in was that $1,500 multiple colors that they can fit because it's fun, has stuff in there like the LUT button, even though it's saying like it'll have the LUT capabilities in this one. LUT stuff because it's fun. Different colors because it's fun. Open gate, oh my gosh, open gate, because it'll make creating for your stuff easier, which makes it fun.
F is for friends who do stuff together. U is for you and me.
You see where I'm going with this? So not having a headphone port, which is important, which I think this one will have since this one did. And the whole side panel situation is the same on the ZV-E1, A7C2, and A6700, so it should be the same. And that it doesn't have a electronic thingy bobber here, the MI shoe, they will not care, because they're like, I don't care about none of that. Yeah, it'd be cool if I could have had, you know, one of the wireless microphones or whatever, but don't really care about that. It's not a deal breaker for them. And that's just enough money to keep going that little bit extra higher to get that or the S5 II or S5 IIX. Not to mention the S5 is even cheaper. And the GH7 is doing some stuff that like, it's only a few cameras can do. This camera will be great. It will be amazing. It will be fun to a point. And honestly, the 422 10-bit, getting access to that, getting access to S-Log is only going to make you want more. It's only going to make you want to do more. And a lot of people will pick up the Mark I's because they'll be great for podcasting and hashtag all the things. But for everybody else in the world that just wants one camera that they can use to make their life easier, and this could have been the camera, they are there too. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'll see y'all in the next video once this camera actually drops, where we get new details, new photos, whatever, and more specs, and see which one makes the best bang for your buck if you only are getting one camera. Let me know your thoughts. I'll see y'all in the comment section.